Well, I'm absolutely delighted that you're actually going to be a C. What I feel is probably one of the most critical videos that you'll watch for this upcoming year. Particularly, I'm very passionate about this topic of how to connect with our students in the classroom and to help them progress academically. And I think what you're about to see is a conversation between an actual teacher and her actual students from this past 2014-2015 year. And I want you to listen closely, because in this interaction, we've purposely made this just kind of like candid camera. We're not doing a Hollywood production. We just brought the teacher and two students into the Quickie Tech office, and I'm going to be asking some questions, and you're going to watch the teacher interact with the students. And by this, I want you to pay very, very special attention to a few points. Number one, what are the factors that this particular teacher implemented in order to help her students progress academically? This is a huge question. Number two, what do the students say from their perspective? Okay, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Miss Song.
Hello, my name is Carol Song, and I've been teaching in a middle school in Los Angeles for the past 10 years. I'm teaching 7th and 8th graders in physical and life science. And today you'll be seeing a conversation between me and the two of my students that I've had in the past school year, 2014-2015 school year, about some of the progress that they've made in my class. And just as a word to encourage other teachers who sometimes might have experienced challenges in connecting with students, I'd like to just share a couple of things that I've done, just very simple things that I feel everyone can do. One thing that I always make sure to do at the beginning of the school year is, or throughout, is make sure that my first interaction with the student is positive. So whether it's the first day that they're enrolled in my class, or maybe it's before they're enrolled in my class, I see them out in the hallway, or I see them after school, I make sure that my interaction with them is positive, and yeah, and I also make sure in the first 2 days of school that my phone call home to their parents is a positive interaction, so that I can gain parents as allies, so that I can gain their support throughout the school year. Because as many of you realize, the job in the classroom as a teacher is so difficult without having the support of the parents in the home. So first night I make, or first and second night, I make about 30 some phone calls, and it does take a lot of time, but there's a huge payoff throughout the whole school year. And parents are so much more likely and willing to support me in the classroom. Okay, so...
Hey, can I ask you another question?
Yes.
You mentioned something to me, Miss Song, about creating an atmosphere where you respect the actual students, and that kind of draws something back. Can you say something about that?
Of course. Okay, so, you know, in the first week of school is so critical in creating a climate in the classroom that is safe for the students, particularly with students who have a history of misbehavior or academic failure. It's really important for them to feel that their time in your class is a fresh new start, and that any mistakes that they've made in the past is it's over and it's gone. And so one thing that I always make sure to say at the beginning of on the first day of school is that I tell them that the first day in my class is like a reset button, pushing the reset button, where every mistake that they've made in the past, it doesn't matter. Of course, I'm going to hear things from other teachers. I'm going to see things on their records, but to me, it doesn't matter, and that I will only judge them according to what they show me in my classroom, in my presence. So when I say that, you can just see like the burden just off their shoulders, like, oh, like almost a sigh of relief, like, oh, okay, it's not going to count. Like all the bad things that I've done in the past is not going to count. So my students, I think, get the feeling that, oh, this person respects me for who I am and not what I used to be. And she's going to give me a chance to show her my best.
But at the same time, Ms. Song, we teachers get totally exhausted. The K through 12 teachers who are watching this video at this very point in time are extremely exhausted. They can't be friends with everybody. Otherwise, they're going to have no life because they get home and they're completely drained. So how do you strike that balance between being their friend, being respectful, and yet when they need to do something at the time they need to do it, they actually listen to you?
Okay, so I have no life. I'm just kidding. Okay, so yeah, it is a very important balance, and I tell them actually on the first day, or at least the first week, because I have a certain personality, and I use it to my advantage in connecting with students. But I also make it very clear that I'm not out to make friends, and I tell them, you know, I have plenty of friends and I don't need any more, especially friends who are 13 years old. So whether you like me or not, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, I'm not going to die because you don't like me. My standards are my standards and they're high, and my course is rigorous. But my students also have the realization that even though I have certain standards, and I am very firm and strict with how I carry out things in my classroom, I will be there to support them and help them if they're willing to succeed, if they're willing to put in the work themselves.
So let's say you have a student. They don't listen. You say, can you please stop talking in my classroom? Can you say what you say next?
Oh, actually, I don't say that. What I do is, something that I learned from a workshop is, what is more effective is to prevent students from making mistakes that they actually don't want to make. And so I created an environment. So on the first day, actually every single day, as soon as my students walk into the classroom, I'm scanning the room for any positive thing that I could possibly praise them for. So it could be as something trivial as like, thank you for taking out your pencil. But for some students, you'll be surprised, or maybe not, that they could go throughout an entire day without having heard anything positive about what they've done. And so when I recognize them for even just little things that that they're doing right, it's more likely to reinforce the desired behavior. So perhaps in other classrooms or in their past experience, they might have only been recognized or received attention when they were doing the wrong thing, like when they were talking or when they didn't have anything out. But here's a teacher where I'm only going to give you attention and I'm only going to praise you and recognize you if you're doing something that I want you to continue. So thank you so-and-so for getting here on time. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for bringing your materials, or, you know, just anything. Thank you for greeting me as you walked in the door. Just any little thing that you could praise them for, it makes a huge difference.
And if you could say anything to those teachers who are burnt out, or they're like saying to themselves, you know what, after this year, I am completely done. What's one thing you would say? And then we'll turn to the talk interview.
Sure. One thing I always tell teachers is the number one person that you need to take care of every school year is yourself. So I think as educators or teachers, we have sometimes a feeling of guiltiness because about taking care of ourselves, because we feel like we always need to give and take care of our students and take care of other people. But and we forget to take care of ourselves. But the number one person that we always want to take care of is ourselves, because when we're happy and we're less stressed, then our students are happy too. So take care of going running or getting exercise and eating good food and taking a night where you're not doing any piece of work. And that's okay. And you have to be okay with not doing work sometimes and taking care of yourself.
That's outstanding. Without further ado, we're actually going to turn the camera and we will actually face your first student. Carol, we're going to give it to you. Just so the audience knows, this is Manuel. He lives in Los Angeles. He's going into 9th grade. He just finished 8th grade, and his 8th grade teacher was Miss Song, who you saw talking just a moment ago. Carol?
Okay, so the first question I want to ask you, Manuel, is what was your initial feeling when you were first enrolled into my class at the beginning of 8th grade?
Well, my initial feeling was excitement. I was excited because I was in a class where uh, I was being taught by someone who was awesome.
But you didn't know me. You've never been in my class, so what made you think that?
Well, from other, I heard from other students that had you say that you're awesome.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you've heard some other kids that some positive things about me, so you thought, okay, well, if other kids liked her, then maybe I might like it too.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so what were some of your general feelings about the new school year in general at the beginning of 8th grade? So, like maybe some outlooks that you had, or any aspirations, or maybe some fears?
Well, some outlooks that I had were to culminate and to walk on stage after the 8th grade year and receive my diploma. And some fears were to not have that happen.
What made you think that might not happen?
Well, from my past experiences, from my past years, I have been dropping academically, and I had a fear that it would affect that year.
Okay, so you're academically, so your performance academically had been kind of declining from 6th to 7th grade, and so even though you wanted to go back up in 8th grade, you weren't sure if that was going to actually happen?
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say are some of the important things that you learned in 8th grade? So, in your case, your progress isn't so obvious on paper, right? So when we check your grades, when we check your records, it's like it doesn't seem like you learned anything and that he's a, quote, bad kid. But I know, and I have the full conviction that you learned some definite lessons in this past year. So what would you say are some values or lessons or things that you've learned this past year that someone may not be, it may not be obvious to somebody who just looks up your records?
Well, I learned about commitment to something.
What do you mean? How so?
If you want to achieve something, you have to stay committed, or you won't succeed, or it won't happen.
So you felt like the reason why you might not have culminated at the end of 8th grade is because you didn't commit?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so how did you learn that lesson? How did you learn about commitment?
Well, I learned it through SRLA, which is Students Run LA. It's training for the LA Marathon.
Like a running club?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that I learned to commit to it.
Mm-hmm. That you won't be able to finish a race or finish the season if you don't? Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So something about commitment. If you were to give some advice to your future teachers who may be struggling and connecting with students who may not be progressing in an obvious way, what would you tell them? Like, hey, if you have a student like me in the future, these are some things that you could do to help a student like me.
Well, just try to make an effort to be in their lives and understand them.
What does that mean? Make an effort to be in your life. Like, get to know you, get to know what you like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So any other advice that you would give to teachers? Or maybe other students who may be struggling, may want to achieve, but they're also fearful that they might not. What would you tell them?
Well, to just play it smart.
What does that mean?
Just think about, always have the result of what's happening in mind, like the ending result of what you're doing.
So think about what you want at the
Yeah.
end. Okay, like constantly think about it. Okay, and that might motivate you or something.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
That was outstanding. I can't believe I just heard that. Some of the things I'd like to point out to you. First of all, the student came in with a fear at the beginning of the year. They had a history, and they realized there was the possibility they may not finish junior high school. And so as a result, that fear has to be recognized. It was great to hear Miss Song actually talk about how she introduced the class that first time. And when Manuel was actually talking, I was just actually quite impressed by this last statement, and that is commitment and have the end view in goal. Now, what I'm going to do, we're going to switch out this student and for another student. Ms. Song, can you talk a little bit about what you saw visibly that let you know with conviction, as you mentioned just a few moments ago, that he was making progress? And Manuel, you did an excellent job. We're going to switch you out.
Okay, so some things that I noticed was even though he wasn't making progress on paper in terms of like his grades weren't necessarily going up, but I could tell, you know, every time I'm giving a lesson that he's actually listening, even though sometimes he pretends he's not. Because I'll ask a question or I'll do a demo, and then his hand will go up and say, "Oh, Miss Song, isn't it like this and this and this?" And anyway, he would ask me some questions that no other students have ever asked me before. And so I know he's listening and I know he's learning. And I realized maybe there's something in the way in him producing the work that, that I would actually grade to put in my grade book. But I knew throughout the time, because of his participation and his change in attitude, that he was actually learning. And also I was one of the coaches on the SRLA team, and there were definite steps that he took in showing that he was more committed to the team.
Ms. Song, I keep hearing SRLA. Is this an extracurricular activity? Is this something you wanted to talk to teachers about? It sounded like he learned commitment, not within a math lesson or a science lesson, but in something else. Can you talk about what those letters mean?
Sure.
And exactly what it did for your students?
Sure. So SRLA stands for Students Run Los Angeles, and it's an LA-wide organization that trains students of middle and high school age to train for the LA Marathon. So they start out with smaller races at the beginning of the school year, like a 5K, and then all the way to the LA Marathon, 26.2 miles in March. And so students who are involved in this program learn things, like Manuel said, of commitment, of sticking to something once you've decided to join, learn things like perseverance, like when they hit the 22-mile mark in the marathon, a lot of them hit the wall and they just don't want to go on, but they realize they have to finish this race because they've started it, and about encouraging one another, their other teammates who may be struggling, encouraging them during practice and during their races. So this teaches them valuable lessons that they'll carry on throughout life.
Now, I got to ask this question. Do any of your students actually make it past the 5-mile mark?
The 5-mile mark in the beginning of the school year?
No, through the whole, I mean, do they, I doubt they finish all 26 miles.
They do.
You're kidding me.
By the end of the season, everybody on the team, they finished the marathon.
No way.
Mm-hmm. We've only had a few exceptions, students who were sick that day or something like that, but they commit and they finish the entire marathon.
Outstanding. Once you finish the marathon, your thought about yourself and what you can achieve probably dramatically changes.
And this is a program where 95% of students who are in the program, who participate in the program, graduate from high school.
Well, this is outstanding. I think some of our teachers might want to know a little bit more about this. If so, they can go ahead and email Donnie@quickietech.com. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and ask you to go ahead and interview your next student. Matthew, thank you so much. We're going to turn this camera around.
Okay, so Matthew, you missed the first week of school for my at the beginning of 8th grade. And so when you came in the second week and you found out you were enrolled in my class, what were some of your feelings or thoughts?
I was excited and glad because in 7th grade, when I was considered a troublemaker, you used to help me out with my classwork when I used to get kicked out of class. And it showed me that you were a caring teacher, not just for your students in your class, but for everybody at the school.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Whoa, this is awesome. I gotta pause right here. Sorry, I don't mean to interject, but are you saying that Miss Song actually helped you even though you weren't in her class? How'd that happen? How'd you get to know about him, Miss Song?
I was just walking. Well, my first interaction with him was one day after school. He was skateboarding in a part of the campus they're actually not supposed to skateboard. And instead of reprimanding him and his friends, I, stopped to chat with them and asked them to show me some skateboarding tricks. And then, because I wanted to make sure, like I said earlier, that our first interaction was positive. And I just like to connect in a positive way with any kid. So I did that. And then in the times when Matthew would be kicked out of class often, I would walk by the counseling office or walk by the attendance office, and here he is again. And so I just made it a point to just stop and say hello and just to get to know him. Partly because I think I knew that he was going to be in my class next year, and I wanted to make sure that his time with me was something that was going to be different and something positive.
This is awesome. So this is an outstanding case study of a student that was struggling one year and progressed the next year. It's this gap between struggling to actually becoming an achiever that I really am just delighted about. Sorry, Ms. Song, great answer. Keep going.
6. So, when somebody looks at this and they see the steady progress, they might be wondering, what happened in the student's attitude and their actions? Like, what are some things that you think helped you in making this change? It was pretty dramatic.
That you used to keep in touch with my mom and tell her how I was doing in class, and you guys would encourage me to do better in school and finish off good for middle school and culminate.
Oh, was it the phone call that I made at the beginning of the school year?
It wasn't just a phone call. It was how you repeatedly texted or emailed my mom, telling her how I was doing in class, and you put some of your time into me and telling my mom what was going on in class or what I was doing.
And then how did your mom follow up at home?
She would email you back and tell me why I was doing either bad or what I can do better to do good in school.
So basically, every time I contacted her, she would talk to you, and then she would praise you. Like that time when I sent a picture of you doing work in math class, and I sent it to her, she praised you for that, something like that. Okay, and
was that an iPhone picture, by the way?
Yeah.
Technology in the classroom.
Oh yeah,
we see it. Keep going.
Okay. Anything else that you feel? So you think me supporting you in the classroom, and then your mom supporting you at home really helped you to make this change? Okay. Wow, that's really great. The question is, if you were to give some advice to your future teachers who may be struggling to connect with students that they've heard, oh, Matthew, oh, he's a troublemaker, what would you tell them?
If it's possible to also keep in touch with my mom and let her know what's going on in class and tell her how I'm doing in school, either bad or good.
Okay, so connect with your parents, let them know your progress. Yeah, okay, awesome. Anything else you want? Oh, well, what are some things that you might want to tell other students who might have been experiencing struggle, like the way you did in 6th and 7th grade? Maybe they didn't have such a positive experience in school.
Don't give up on yourself. Just keep trying. You'll get it done eventually.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Where did you learn that? Not all kids even think that way.
I was struggling in school. I was pretty bad, and then, I don't know, I just decided to turn things around and become a good kid.
Awesome.
What made you make that decision? I feel that's the most critical part. That's what we all want to learn from, to help students make that decision. But that's really difficult.
It was time for me to grow up. I couldn't stop being immature. I just had to make the change in order to do good and success in life.
I'm going to push you a little bit more. If you were to name maybe 1 to 2 things, or just a few things that really helped you make that decision, what would that be? Were these people, events, something?
Mostly my teacher and my parent. My mom.
Your mom. Okay. Kind of like what you talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Teacher supporting you in the class, and then the parent supporting you at home.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's outstanding. I mean, we need to give a round of applause to all the moms of the world, don't you think? So thank you, Matthew. If you don't mind stepping out, I'm going to have Ms. Song actually wrap up by any closing comments she would like to say, particularly to encourage us teachers who, again, get exhausted very easily, that being a Miss Song is something everybody can do.
Yeah. So one thing I really learned with Matthew is treating the parent as a partner and an expert. Because I used to always contact parents and telling them what they can do. But with Matthew, I realized actually the mom is the expert. The mom has like a PhD in Matthew. So I got a lot, through my conversations with her, I got a lot of insight into his personality, some of his tendencies. And so I use that in the classroom to help me connect and to help structure my support for Matthew's success. And so, yeah, for any teacher out there, just making sure your connection with the student as well as the parent, the first time especially, is positive, and to recognize them for what they're doing right instead of what they're doing wrong. And just simple things, like just giving them respect. Yeah, it's not really rocket science. When somebody respects you, you want to respect them back. So I like to treat all my students in the way that I like to be treated. And so, yeah.
Great.